Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Always exciting.
This time, we're going to be looking at sales strategies and the language that people use when they talk about sales.
Okay.
We found this really interesting YouTube video. It's called Business English Learning Podcast Conversation Episode 2.
Okay.
And it's from a channel called English Podcast Zone. And it's basically a mock sales meeting
Okay.
with different people in a company trying to come up with ways to improve their sales.
I see.
And we're going to be looking not just at like the vocabulary words, but also how effective their communication styles are and
Right.
how they work together as a team.
Yeah, and I think it's a really clever way to teach business English. Yeah, because it's one thing to learn vocabulary
Right.
in a list, but it's another thing to see it in action,
Cool.
to see how people actually use it,
Yeah.
to get their point across,
Exactly.
to disagree, to negotiate.
Yeah, and so right away, this video kind of throws us into the situation where the company is having a tough time driving sales. And we hear that phrase, drive sales, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And basically, it
To
means,
increase sales.
right, to increase sales, to make more sales, to sell more.
Yeah.
And their problem is that their product is the most expensive one in the market.
Oh.
So they have to figure out a way to, either lower their prices or come up with a different strategy.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting because, you can't always just match your competitors.
Right.
Especially if you've got higher costs or you're trying to position your product as the premium option.
Exactly.
So I'm really curious to see what kind of solutions they come up with.
Yeah, me too. So one employee, Natalie, suggests doing a 2-for-1 promotion.
Yeah.
But immediately there's pushback. People are like, it'll never fly with Swan. And Swan is the CEO.
Oh, interesting.
So it makes you wonder,
It does.
what kind of leader is he that people are so scared to even suggest ideas?
Yeah, that phrase, it'll never fly, that's really telling about the company culture. I mean, it sounds like there's not a lot of room for risk-taking
Right.
or, being creative or trying new things.
And then, as if on cue,
Okay.
Mr. Swan walks into the meeting.
Oh,
He's late.
okay.
And he kind of immediately shoots down this idea of a 2-for-1 promotion.
Oh, wow.
And he uses some pretty dismissive language,
Right, and this kind of reinforces that feeling we got
right?
from that phrase earlier, like people are almost afraid of him.
Right.
A good leader should be encouraging people to share their ideas,
Right.
even if he doesn't end up using them.
Exactly.
It should be, an open dialogue.
Yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Later in the meeting, Mr. Swan, he presents the exact same idea. A
And-
2-for-1 promotion as his own idea. And he's like, this is brilliant and very creative.
Oh, my God.
So it's like a total missed opportunity to,
Yeah.
be a good leader and encourage his team.
Yeah. I mean,
It's almost like he's stealing her idea.
yeah, it's a classic example of how not to manage a team.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine how demoralizing that would be
Right.
for the employees?
Totally.
Makes them feel like their ideas aren't valued
Right.
and like they can't speak up.
And it makes you wonder how many other good ideas
Yeah.
have been, just shut down.
Totally.
People are afraid of Mr. Swan.
Exactly. And this is why, good communication and leadership are so important,
Yeah,
not just for sales, but for any team
totally.
to be successful.
So before we dive too deep into Mr. Swan's, personality,
Yeah.
let's switch gears for a second and look at some of the language tips that this video gives.
Okay.
They have this section called Fluency Builders.
Oh, cool.
And it focuses on ways to, sound more natural when you're speaking English
I like that.
in a business setting.
Yeah.
So one thing they suggest is using the phrase, be here any minute, instead of saying like, someone will arrive soon.
Okay.
It just sounds a little bit more natural.
Yeah, it's less formal. It's
Yeah.
more conversational.
Right. And they also suggest replacing think about with consider.
Right.
It sounds a little bit more like deliberate.
Yeah, more thoughtful.
Yeah.
Like you've really given it some thought.
And I also really liked their suggestion of using brilliant instead of great.
Yeah.
It just has like more energy,
Yeah.
more enthusiasm.
Yeah, like you're really impressed
Yeah.
by the idea.
So far, this video has given us a lot to think about.
It has.
From sales strategies to leadership styles
Yeah.
to how to speak more naturally.
And we've really only just scratched the surface.
Right.
I mean, there's so much more to explore when it comes to how people use language
Yeah.
in the business world.
Now, before we go any further, I want to pause here and ask you, the listener, a question.
What's that?
What stood out to you so far?
Yeah.
Was there anything in the language they used
Yeah.
or the way the characters interacted that, you were like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Or, maybe it reminded you of something that happened at your work.
Right. Have you ever been in a situation like that
Yeah.
where you felt like your ideas weren't being heard?
Yeah. Or you had a boss like Mr. Swan.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to your insights in a bit.
Okay.
But first, let's take a closer look at how companies can use promotions to drive sales.
Okay. Sounds good. Picking up on that idea of promotions, it's interesting how they're often seen as this like quick fix.
Yeah.
When sales are down. But as we saw in the video, just, throwing out a 2-for-1 deal
Right.
doesn't always work.
Yeah. It's like using a hammer when you need a scalpel.
Exactly. You might get results,
Right.
but they might not be the results that you want.
Yeah. Like what could go wrong with a 2-for-1?
Well, let's say you're a company that's known for like high quality products, premium products.
Right.
If you suddenly start offering huge discounts, it could actually hurt your brand.
Really?
Yeah, people might start to think that your products aren't as good
That's interesting.
or as exclusive.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So it's not just about attracting new customers.
Right.
It's about keeping the ones you already have.
Right. Making sure you're not like
Exactly.
cheapening your brand.
Yeah. And then there's the financial side of things too.
Yeah.
You have to think about the cost of the product, marketing, all of that.
Yeah.
So a poorly planned promotion
Right.
could actually end up costing you money instead of making you money.
It sounds like there's a lot more to promotions than meets the eye.
Definitely. It's not just about lowering prices
Right.
and hoping for the best.
So how do you think they could have approached this?
I mean, instead of just doing a generic 2-for-1, they could have tried something more targeted,
Okay.
like maybe a discount for first-time buyers
Oh.
or a loyalty program
Right.
for people who are already customers.
Yeah. I like that.
It's about building relationships,
Right.
not just focusing on price.
Exactly. And they could have, had a specific goal in mind. Like maybe they want to increase brand awareness.
Yeah, or launch a new product line
Right.
that would give the promotion a purpose,
Yeah.
and then you can actually measure
Right.
whether it's working or not.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, so there's a real strategy to it.
Yeah. It's a whole science.
It is.
Speaking of psychology,
Yeah.
what about the, dynamics in that meeting?
Yeah.
You talked about Mr. Swan, but
All right.
how do you think the other employees were feeling?
Oh, I bet they were feeling pretty stressed.
Right.
I mean, just imagine.
Especially Natalie,
Yeah.
who had her idea stolen.
Yeah, it's like classic idea hijacking.
Yeah.
And it's so demoralizing.
Right.
It makes you feel like your contributions don't matter.
That makes you wonder, like,
Yeah.
what's the company culture like?
Totally.
If people are afraid to share their ideas.
Right. How can you have innovation
Exactly.
if everyone's afraid to speak up?
Yeah. But what about Mr. Swan? Do you think he was intentionally trying to steal her idea?
I mean, it's hard to say.
Right.
But sometimes when people are in positions of power,
Right.
they kind of lose sight of other people's perspectives.
It's like they get blinded by their own.
Yeah, they just want to be
Yeah.
the one with all the good ideas.
Yeah. And so they might not even realize that they're doing it.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder for all of us
It is.
to, be self-aware
Yeah.
and listen to other people.
Especially if you're in a leadership position.
Right.
You have to be extra careful.
So this deep dive has taken us down some interesting paths.
It has.
From simple sales vocab to, leadership
Right.
and psychology.
It's amazing how much you can learn from one little conversation.
Right. So before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to come back to you, the listener.
Right.
We asked you earlier what stood out to you.
Yeah.
And now we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Did anything resonate with you?
Yeah.
Like a specific phrase or
Yep.
maybe something reminded you of your own experiences?
Right.
We want to hear from you.
Because your insights are just as valuable as ours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is amazing, how much we can unpack from these conversations.
Right. And it makes you think about like all the different layers of communication.
Right.
We focus a lot on vocabulary,
Yeah.
specific phrases.
Right.
But what about the stuff that's not actually said?
Oh, you mean like nonverbal communication?
Right. Like body language.
Yeah.
Tone of voice.
Yeah. Eye contact, all of that.
Right.
That's huge.
Especially in a business setting.
Totally. I mean, think about Natalie.
Right.
In that meeting, she seemed really hesitant.
Yeah.
She was using a lot of filler words,
Right.
speaking really softly.
Yeah. Like even if her idea was amazing,
Right.
maybe the way she presented it
Yeah,
kind of hurt her.
exactly. And there's actually research that shows
Really?
that people are more likely to be persuaded by someone
How interesting.
who seems confident,
Uh-huh.
even if they're saying the exact same thing.
So it's not just what you say,
Right.
it's how you say it.
Exactly.
And it made me think about Mr. Swan, too.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't see him in the video,
Right.
but I just imagine him, like,
Oh, yeah?
rolling his eyes when Natalie.
Totally. With that condescending smirk.
Yeah, and, that kind of nonverbal communication just
Yeah.
makes the message even worse.
Exactly. It just reinforces that negative feeling.
It's like adding insult to injury.
Yeah, it's like communication is this whole package deal.
Right.
It's not just the words, it's everything else, too.
Right. And that brings us to a question for you, the listener.
Okay. I like it.
How much attention do you pay
Yeah.
to your own nonverbal communication?
Right. Are you aware
Are you, like, sending the right signals?
of the message you're sending
Yeah.
with your body language, with your tone of voice?
Right.
That's something to think about.
Because you might have a brilliant idea,
Totally.
but if you don't present it well,
It might never
it might never fly.
take flight, exactly.
So that's it for our deep dive into the language of sales strategies.
So that was fun.
We hope you learned some new vocabulary
Yeah.
and also got some insights into how people communicate,
In the business world.
especially in, high-pressure situations,
That's
like
right.
a sales meeting.
Right.
So until next time, happy communicating.
See you later.